Hello, hello, hello. We are back for a History News Live. This is very exciting. I'm going to just do this. This background has been sent in by the lovely Steve. So in the comments, what do you think I am sat in front of while you are putting your guesses in? It's been since the end of August since we have last done a History News Live. I have been live, but that was to show you that I'd spawned and to present Simba-like with Rafiki, my offspring, at the cliff edge in front of the Serengeti. So we did that, but it's been a while, so I'm rusty. And you have been diligently, and I'm very grateful, you've been diligently still sending me news items. I had over 400 suggested news articles. So alas, we have not got 400 slides today. We are still running on a shortened schedule because my husband is currently upstairs with a 4-year-old and a 3-month-old, and we're going to see how that goes. Stuff's happened globally in the last few months that's been interesting. Hey, I feel like I've occasionally been staring into the abyss, and the abyss has stared back at me. But we're here, and we can hopefully have a nice time. Let's just do some welcomes. Hello, thank you for joining live. I'm going to try and keep myself together. I'm very excited to be back. If you are watching on the playback, thank you so much. Thank you for giving up your time as we hurtle towards the new year. It is just gone 8:30 on the 30th of December. It is Monday, the 30th of December, just for anybody who is, well, where I am anyway, just for anyone who is keeping track, because I don't know about you, and I'm fairly sure this is a almost ubiquitous experience for those who live in nations that celebrate Christmas. But that period between Christmas and New Year's Eve, which I have now coined as, this is a bit history after dark, but I have now coined as the festive perineum, because it's between the genitals of Christmas and the bumhole of New Year. And in the festive perineum, there is no date or time or day. It has lost all meaning. So welcome, whenever you are watching this, to this part of our lives. We have today got some updates. We have some repatriation / decolonization news. We have got some new news. We've got some ding-dongs, and we've also got some events and exhibitions. If you are looking at the description box, you will see that the articles are listed and numbered in the description box. The numbers relate to the numbers that you will see on screen at the bottom of the slides. I have lots of people to thank for sending me articles. So thank you ever so much. Let's see a little look at the comments. Hello, everybody. 71 of you in. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Please do hit the like. Tell other pals. Hello. Happy New Year. Let's do some hellos. Happy Monday. Well done. I think you put that in, Jessie, before I'd started rambling on about the festive perineum. It's clearly, I'm sleep deprived, pals. It's happening. Medusa Snudpuckle, hello to you. Good evening, Peter. Thank you for joining. Rebecca, oh, is it the 31st for you? See, there we go. I've been guffing on about it being the 30th of December, but if you are in Australia, it's already New Year's Eve. Well, I hope the future is looking good. If you've got any warnings for us, do let us know. Hello, Marianne. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bone Mama. Good afternoon to you too. Julesy, happy soon New Year to everybody. Yes, indeed. Hello, Hannah. Oh, yes. Happy Christmas. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. I don't know if anybody's been following the TikTok drama. There's been some transatlantic beef going on, because apparently the Americans have now found out who Robbie Williams is. You've got his biopic coming to you, and people seem to be upset they don't know who Robbie Williams is. And what I will say is, while not knowing who he is and then getting the film released over there might not make any sense, my rejoinder to that is, but you do now know who he is. So this could be elite marketing on his part. Hey, Manda. Hello, Victoria. Thank you so much for joining. Fluffy Monkey M, hello to you. Happy New Year from Arizona. Thank you so much, DM. Stuart, I think that means you're from Dartmoor. Dartmoor. I don't know if that's somewhere that I don't know about, but that could be Dartmoor and a typo. Hello, Stuart. Hello, friends. I'm just going to quickly have a scroll down. Thank you so much. Merry festive perineum to you too, antique little girl. Thank you all so much. You would like festive perineum needs to be on a t-shirt. Do you know what? I'm going to make a note of it in my mind palace, and that can be. We can do some merch for next Christmas. Festive perineum, anyone? Or maybe I should put it up now so I don't forget. Because honestly, the baby brain is real. So please do bear with. We are live, so it's highly likely that I am going to do some snafus. Makeup Monarchies is about Robbie. Those of us who are smart know who he is. Loved him and take that. Well, there you go. There you go. I also, it's just very strange that there is, but then equally, I do think there's an element to which it serves a lot of algorithms' purposes, particularly in the current climate, to sow as much angst and division as possible. And to try and create disunity wherever it can be, principally because I'm sure there are a lot of people who are very concerned about individuals, particularly on a global level. Unionizing is the word I'm going to use. I'm going to put that there. Hello, friends. Hello. Lovely to see you all. Deborah, how are the kiddos? How am I? The kiddos are brilliant. Gabriel had a wonderful Christmas. He got a lot of Bluey merch, so he's overjoyed by that. He also got a lot of Moana merch. And today, we convinced him to watch a film that was not part of the Frozen or Moana franchise, and that wasn't Peppa Pig or Bluey. We've crossed the Rubicon, friends, and we are watching a film that he's never seen before. He doesn't like new things. He doesn't like new things. We watched Aladdin. And there are some troubling moments in Aladdin that I had forgotten about, but he did watch it. So there we go. And Dominic is a little sweetie. He's a very, very chilled little boy who mostly just smiles a lot. So we've been very, very lucky with him. I'm not going to use the word because I don't want to curse it, but as things I've heard about second-born children have not materialized yet, which probably means the second that child is weaponized and walking, I'm going to need a bucket of Valium. So, Hannah, I'm not going to do a lot on Robbie, but the logic behind him being portrayed as a monkey, he struggled a lot with his mental health, and he isn't necessarily proud of a lot of his behaviors when he was a young man. He didn't make all the choices that he would enjoy. He has positioned himself as feeling less evolved than other people. So that's the reason for the monkey thing. And I think it looks really cool. I think the CGI looks amazing. Julesy is throwing in a new place for me to visit. There's a place in the south called Taintsville. Spectacular work. Maybe when I get some childcare, we could celebrate the festive perineum in Taintsville. Oh, there we go. There we go. It's in Florida. Well, do you know what? I might wait a few years. might wait a few years. See how things play out. My favorite game is to put someone's birthday in and then just search Florida Man. I know that's a well-known game. It's brilliant. It's an excellent game. So, does anyone know what I'm in front of? What Steve has sent me? Anybody want to chuck in a guess? I didn't see any guesses in the comments. I'm going to have a little look and see if anyone's chucked it in. It's fairly obvious it's a religious building. I think that's a bit of a giveaway. Tis a church. So for those, I'm going to chuck it in. I'm going to tell you, Steve has sent me this beautiful drone shot that he took himself. He's getting his expert drone shot here. This is Tewkesbury Abbey. So thank you, Steve, for that absolutely wonderful abbey. What a treat. Thank you. Now then, it is time to begin with some thanks before we jump in to the slides. Everyone's jumping in, saying Julesy and Beth thanking Steve for their picture. It is lovely, Bo Mama. Thank you so much, Steve. So my thank yous will begin now. Thank you for sending me these lots of news items. Thank you, Yvonne, John, my name twin cat. Thank you, Steve, as well, in addition to the picture. Thank you, Jessie, Beth, Penny, PistolAnnie, Joseph, Elverta, Jenna, Kathy, Daniella. Snudpuckle is how you sometimes appeared in my email, so I'm going to put you as Snudpuckle here. Ellen, Kelly, Zoe, Tiffany, Natalie, Sarah, Alicia, Shane. Thank you ever so much for taking the time to send me those news items. As I say, and I said previously when we used to do these, I'm going to start again now, it does mean so much that people are just wandering about in their daily lives and they come across a news item and they think enough to go, oh, I remember there's that lady on the internet who talks about history who would probably like to know about this, and to then take the time to send me that in email form. It's really lovely to know that people, lots of people, this number of people, will take time out of their day, and frequently multiple times out of their day, to go to the effort of sending me news items. So thank you ever so much. Oh, Make of Monarchies. Tiffany, hello. Tiffany is you. Thank you so much. You don't have to apologise. I asked people to keep sending me the news items while I was having the baby, and it was lovely to be reading them and to be sort of have something to occupy my mind that wasn't small human. And particularly when I was in the hospital, it was a much better birth experience this time. However, I did share something on either Threads or Blue Sky. I am on Blue Sky now, which was a news piece that went out on ITV over here. And in fact, a friend of mine was featured in it, a girl I went to school with. She had her baby at the same hospital as I did a couple of weeks before. And the one thing that I have to complain about is that the ward I was on, it was the hottest place I've ever been. It was like a sauna, and I'm not even exaggerating. I had a scrunchie in my hair. It took that scrunchie 3 days to dry out. I've heard, they told me that it was very frequent for nurses and new mothers to pass out because it was so hot. The babies are so sleepy, they won't latch, so babies can't establish their feeding, which, is not great at any time. But if you are there because you've had a high risk delivery and you might be on the ward for a week, that is really bad news for all concerned. And they were trying their best. The windows were open. There were 2 or 3 fans running. We were in a private room. We got a private room. We put a fan on. The windows are open. At first, I was sat next to a massive industrial air conditioning unit, and I'm telling you that the air was so still and so oppressive. You have this just screaming, banging headache. And when you've been told throughout pregnancy about the risks of things like preeclampsia, and one of the warning signs is a screaming headache, you're like, is this the heat or am I dying? I don't know, but it's deeply disturbing. Ray, thank you very much for the super sticker. That's very, very kind of you. Thank you. So let us hop in to the first of our updates. And this is a fascinating video connected to the Benin bronzes. And the this is about the modern makers who are who, in complete continuation, are still performing and making the bronzes in the same way as they have been made for centuries, in the same way that the bronzes that are now in various institutions, the majority in the British Museum, this is the way that these have been crafted. So when people talk about artisans and their cultural heritage and their right, effectively, to have access to that cultural heritage, and this is one of the reasons why I bang on about this so much with the Benin bronzes, I think it is a complete anathema that individuals who are crafting beautiful pieces like this as part of a lineage, a cultural lineage and heritage that has gone back for centuries, centuries and centuries, it should be illegal. It's definitely immoral that for them to visually lay eyes on one of the largest collections of their heritage, they would have to get a very expensive flight to one of the most expensive cities on earth to walk in a museum. Yeah, the museum might be free, but London isn't. And this is why I'm so in favor of these going home, because artisans like this deserve to see their work beside and in connection with the work that inspired it and in which it's a heritage of. So this is a fabulous video to check out. Justine, can you believe Queen had to give birth in the heat? And do you know what? If you had a now, let's reverse. So, particularly in the Tudor period, we did have what's known as the kind of mini ice age. So it was cooler than it is now, and stone castles, stone palaces potentially do not let in quite so much heat. They can maybe cooler, but in the notion of what is healthy in confinement, they are in these tapestry lined walls with the fire blazing. It's gonna be a sweaty experience. I think being in that space for a month before you give birth, potentially, maybe even 6 weeks, and then at least 4 weeks after. So you could be in there for 8, 10, 12 weeks, potentially with people that you don't even like very much. Frankly, it's miraculous that more violence wasn't done by medieval and early modern queens, because if somebody had kept me in that heat for a prolonged period of time, I think they would have got a fat lip. I'm just little hook. Julesy, you have a lovely winter open windows or days. I see. We keep our bedroom window open. We've only had it closed because we're worried about our neighbours hearing a baby screaming. But I would probably have the bedroom window open now. I maybe close it on and off in December. It's usually closed through January, at least into mid-February, but then it opens in about mid-February, and it will stay open for the rest of the year. Yes, Marie Antoinette having to have a huge crowd. And honestly, it's frankly miraculous she was able to safely birth, because we are mammals, and that kind of fear response, it's really a wonder that there wasn't, a shoulder dystocia or something else, or there was just no dilation, because that kind of stress and pressure is enough to make anyone try and run away. Hello, Shane. Yes, it is good to be back, and I hope everyone had a good Christmas if they celebrate. Next up, Sycamore Gap. So this is the trial of the individuals charged with cutting down the Sycamore Gap tree. It's now been adjourned on the basis of illness. So one of the defendants, a man called Daniel Graham, who is 39, was apparently too ill to attend. It's set to be a 2-week trial. He and Adam Carruthers, who is 32, so these are both grown adults, 32 and 39, have pleaded guilty to 2 counts of criminal damage. The little prosecutors haven't told us very much about what they're going for, but they said the value of the tree does exceed £620,000, while the damage to the wall was assessed at £1,100. I understand why you'd know the damage to the wall, but how do you put a price on a tree, and particularly a tree of this significance? So we will keep an eye on it. Presumably for the History News Live, there is going to be an update on what's happened in the trial, or it might be underway by the time we do the next History News Live. I can't work out how dates function anymore, so we'll see. What I also have seen news articles that the saplings from the Sycamore Gap, many of those have propagated and they are being planted in various places. So the Sycamore Gap tree, its little saplings live on. So there is that hope as well. Medusa, I am on Blue Sky. Hold fire. Let me remind myself of what my handle is. So it's Katrina-Marchant.bsky.social. So I am on Blue Sky. I'm not, I don't really know. I'm reading a lot of things on there and liking a lot of things on there, but I'm not 100% sure of how to use it. It's obviously very like Twitter, still not going to call it X, but without being a screaming hellscape, which I no longer have a Twitter. So if anybody, for some reason, should see a handle like mine posting on Twitter, that is not me. I downloaded the archive of my tweets and I deleted my account. So there should not be anybody posting under my name, and I shan't be going back. I shan't be going back. This is following, so I'm sure many of us would have seen the reopening of Notre Dame. The great, the good, and the not so good turned up for that. And this is related to the archaeology that has been able to go on. I mean, there's no way that the burning down of Notre Dame was anything other than a massive tragedy. However, the destruction of it did allow an unprecedented level of archaeology that certainly I don't think would have been possible had it not been for the burning. I'm not in any way approving of the burning, just to make that clear. But it did offer archaeologists this rare opportunity, and they have found more than 1,000 fragments of historical artwork, which we are told can be used to, quote, detect and undertake the scientific study of archaeological remains on land and underwater that might otherwise be destroyed by land development work. So this archaeological work has been going on since February of 2022. We have heard about something they found. So, for example, that lead sarcophagus, but there is a whole kind of rich tapestry, as many as 1,035 artwork fragments, 100 graves, which increases the cathedral's total record to more than 500 burials. They've got heads and torsos of limestone statues, including one of Christ, a 13th century rood screen that previously separated the choir from the sanctuary. They also learnt how Notre Dame would have been originally constructed by medieval or Middle Ages artisans. So they've got by looking at the beams, they can also find out about the climate of the time when those logs were felled to make it into the cathedral. They have found that the carpenters would have used roughly 100-year-old oak trees, approximately 49 feet long, shaped with a Durer axe, whatever that may be. They found rope holes in the wood that would have tied logs together for transport along the Seine, and the heavy use of iron clamps to bind stones, it sheds further light on the building process. Some of these clamps, roughly 10 to 20 inches long, date to the beginning of the construction of the cathedral in the 1160s. So that means that Notre Dame would have been the first Gothic cathedral to use iron as a building material. They also discovered things about stone cutting techniques by looking at the rocky surfaces, and they found evidence of reuse of materials. Pillars previously unseen amongst the foundations are connected by long green beams. Not quite sure what that is, but this is something that distributes the building's weight. I don't know what that looks like. This complete analysis of Notre Dame is, in addition to documenting what's there, further authenticates medieval artifacts, such as the large rose stained glass windows in the cathedral's transept. So that's really interesting. And Notre Dame has been open to the public officially since the 8th of December. So if you are around those parts, definitely check it out. And please, additionally, if you go and you're allowed to take photographs inside, please do take some pictures. Maybe it can be my next background, which would be lovely. The Parthenon's up next. Research reveals the vibrant colours of the Parthenon sculpture. This is not new news, but I think this video is new. We did know that these sculptures, and indeed most Greco-Roman sculptures, they weren't the white alabaster that we see. They were vibrantly painted. But now we have got details of the colours. And on top of that, in addition to kind of being brightly coloured, it seems that ancient artisans had also applied things that looked like textures, so it could mimic specific materials in paint onto these sculptures. These textures are then enhanced with various pigments. So there's a purple and also an Egyptian blue. And purples and blues are, and have, to my knowledge, always been very expensive dyes to get hold of, particularly if they're going to last. The Egyptian blue was identified in various sections of the sculptures, including 11 pediment sculptures and a frieze figure. They also used analysis to delve into the techniques of the sculptors who crafted these statues. So the different artists using different methods. So perhaps identifying going forward who did what. How they depicted the fabrics worn by the gods. So how they showed linen, wool, and even polished leather. Previously, there had been an idea that the Parthenon sculptures were, in quotes, understated in their clothing. But in the new polychromery, this analysis, it appears that they are, in fact, equally intricate. There is a level of surprise in discovering the paint traces because they were completely invisible to the naked eye, and that while they potentially knew there was going to be paint there, what they have found has exceeded expectations. Even with these new painting examples being presented, a comprehensive understanding of the artist's painting technique remains elusive. We are told that it's almost impossible to accurately imagine their original appearance, since the knowledge of pigments used is not enough to understand the whole picture. So because techniques have been lost, we have potentially lost the understanding of how this might have looked. So we are still working on a best guess, but there are lots of pictures and also video that you may want to check out in that linked article. There has been this article does have pictures of the casts of the victims of Pompeii. And while that is not human remains, they are casts. And also, just to be clear, what you see when you go to Pompeii, that is not a human remain at all. There's not, for example, a skeleton in there. What you are seeing, to my understanding, is a plaster that filled the void in the molten material where a body was entombed and presumably fully cremated. So that's what you're seeing there. And while it's not human remains, for me, it was so close to being human remains that I didn't feel comfortable showing it on screen. Also, as you can see, this is very text heavy, so I felt that I could better use the space by having the text. So just as a warning, if you do go to this, you will see those casts of the victims of Pompeii. Regardless, whatever was left behind, they did have sufficient. It's human remainsy enough that it's sufficient for them to do DNA analysis. The previous understanding, one of those very famous scenes, is that there was a mother cradling their child, holding their child, presumably to comfort them, or in the process of trying to flee what was going to be certain death. And for a long time, this embrace has been characteristic and characterized as that pure embodiment of a mother's love. However, based upon DNA analysis, it's the mother is in fact, on the basis of DNA, male. This potentially debunks long-held assumptions about the identity of the people found together. So there are bone fragments that mix in with the plaster in these 14 casts. Among them, 3 of the 4 individuals found at the foot of the staircase. And this is in the house of the golden bracelet. That name comes from the jewellery that's worn on the arm of one of the 2 adults found with a child on their hip. So what they thought they'd found was a mother with a golden bracelet holding their child. The thought process was that one was the mother of the 2 children in the group, the other was the father. However, this bracelet ring individual carrying the child was male, and based upon the DNA analysis, it seems that he had black hair and dark skin. There is seemingly no evidence based upon DNA that he was any relative of the 2 children, both of whom were boys. Instead, it suggests the ancestors of the 3 victims had origins in different Eastern Mediterranean or North African population. There are also genetic clues hinting that the other adult in the scene may also have been a male. The 2 victims that were preserved in an embrace found in a building that's known to history as the House of Cryptoporticus. It was thought that this represented a mother and daughter, 2 sisters, a pair of lovers. However, what they have found is that one of the victims was male and the pair were not related through the female line. So these discoveries are challenging long-standing interpretations, but also not only of who these people were, but also how people presented themselves in the ancient world. The notion of associating jewellery with being feminine or female, physical closeness as an indicator of biological relationships, because then as now, and my Christmas and my community is a testament to it, that most of the people that my children think of as being their aunts and uncles are our chosen family. My village is chosen family predominantly. So the notion that people have to be biologically related to care about somebody's children or a child is just obviously hokum. Not every narrative was overturned, however. They did find a victim who was found alone in a room, as previously thought, was male and potentially a local to Pompeii. The question that they are most interested in is where these people are coming from. And the logic being that they know this society does have its basis in enslaving people, so that potentially links to there being a greater diversity of individuals. So quite who these 2 children were and the 2 men with them, so these 4 male figures, according to the DNA, who all seem to come from different parts of the Mediterranean. Was this a family or a group that care for each other, although not being blood tied? Maybe they had a tied experience together of caring for one another. It's been suggested that people found on the stairs could have been or were descended from migrants to Italy. The research shows scientific analysis can provide new insight into the lives of victims of Pompeii. Quote, the people of Pompeii were not Romans from the city of Rome, but people of the Mediterranean. So that is our updates. Julesy, it may well have been people fleeing together. I think if human nature as well, you don't have to know a small child to see a small child in danger and instinctively pick them up and have them on your hip while you're trying to flee. What we could just be seeing is 4 individuals who happen to share a potential life experience of being migrants or descended from migrants, or even enslaved people or descended from enslaved people, in a time of what must have been inordinate terror, trying to flee for their lives. Equally, these 4 people could have had a long history together as a family of choice. Nicole, I completely agree. It's whenever I hear people talk about that old, well-worn phrase, the past another country, they do things differently there. There is, as with all things, obviously an element of truth to that. The society and its expectations have definitely changed over time, but people make up society, and at our core, all of this, manners, decorum, even man-made laws, as old and historic as they are, when backs are against the wall, when crunch time hits, we are animals, and the span of recorded history is not so great that we have evolved in any distinct or pronounced way. And so the people of 78 BC, the people of 1000 BC are as driven to care for their children, to put food on their tables, roof over their heads, clothes on their backs, to fear war and famine and plague as we are today. Because human nature is human nature. So, on to repatriations. A ceramic painting sold under duress during World War II is now bound for auction. This is the Allentown Art Museum. It's selling the painting and is going to split the proceeds with the heirs of the work's one-time Jewish owners. This is a German-Jewish couple, Henry and Hertha Bromberg. They fled the Nazis in 1938, and while doing so had little choice but to dispense with their art. They used the sales to fund passage to France, Switzerland, and then ultimately the United States. For the past 10 years, decade or so, the descendants of that couple have sought to reach out to institutions in possession of Bromberg art and essentially asks for its return and repatriation. The decision to go to auction as opposed to a full restitution was described by the museum as striking a balance between its fiduciary duties and its commitment to upholding the highest ethical stewardship standards. They received the claim by the heirs in July 22. They then conducted research on the painting's provenance and clearly found that there was some merit to it. Both parties agreed that the ceramic was sold under duress as they fled Nazi Germany. They disagree on the timing. The descendants of the Brombergs believe it was sold before the couple left Germany, while the museum's research suggests it happens later. Even if it happens in the States, when you have been forced to leave with nothing and your lives are in danger, it's still sold under duress. So there is some debate there. The record indicates the painting was not confiscated by the Nazi regime or the subject of a forced sale. Rather, the painting is likely best considered part of an emerging concept known as flight goods, property sold in transit while fleeing from persecution. I don't know what the law is. I'm not a lawyer. I would say that this is splitting hairs, and whether your work is seized, whether you are forced to sell it in country, or whether you're forced to sell it because you're fleeing from persecution, all of those are coerced sales. All of those are sold under duress, would be my thought process. And none of it would happen if it were not for the persecution and the atrocities. The museum claimed that the painting was sold by the Brombergs to the F. Kleinberger Gallery in Paris before it was acquired by the Pennsylvania Institution, who did so through a New York gallery in 1961. Christie's, the auction house in this case, did not respond to requests for comments. They have not yet set a pre-auction valuation for the painting. The highest price so far achieved for a painting listed as a Cranach the Elder sold for $1.1 million. So there we go. Another portrait by the artist of Henry IV, Duke of Saxony, sold at Christie's Old Master sale for $352,800. So we shall see if and or when this sells, what it goes for. The descendants are still in pursuit of roughly 80 works. So we will also potentially hear this name coming up again as hopefully repatriations continue. Egyptian archaeologists is calling on the Berlin Museum to return the bust of Nefertiti. This is the former Egyptian archaeologist, and former antiquities minister Zahi Hawass launched a petition for return of Egypt of this bust of Nefertiti, which is in the Neues Museum in Berlin. This bust was uncovered at Amarna in 1912 by a German archaeological mission. So Amarna was the capital of Nefertiti's husband, Akhenaten. He became known as the heretic king. So a lot of his stuff was then destroyed. The petition asked for the return of the bust, saying it was removed from Egypt illegally after its discovery. What's been asked for, if you go to Hawazaz, it's all one word, so I'm not quite sure what it is, but it's hawazazi.com. There is a petition that you can sign if you would like the bust to be returned to Egypt. Hawass said he's not calling for repatriation of artifacts taken out of Egypt legally. His campaign is focused on repatriating three main beautiful objects. That's the bust of Nefertiti, the Rosetta Stone, and the Dendera Zodiac. The museum in Berlin were not immediately available for comment, so we will see. People push Medusa and Chris. Some questions about the authenticity. Is the bust a fake? Not my period of history, and also authentication and fakery also not in my wheelhouse. I haven't seen that, but I don't doubt that if that's both of you saying it, I've got no doubt that there is some question about it. I haven't seen that. So if you could potentially, if you see any articles doing the rounds, please do pop them my way, because I'd love to know more about that. A Boston museum has returned a looted 100-year-old necklace to Turkey. And my goodness, it is gorgeous. This was taken from a Turkish archaeological site in 1976. It is gold and carnelian. And it's now returning to its rightful home. It dates to between 550 and 450 BCE. It had been on display at the MFA, the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, but this month, that being September, September, there was essentially a vow that it's going to go back. The MFA senior curator for provenance says, quote, "For many years, participants in the art trade didn't really ask a lot of questions about provenance. Ain't that the truth? It's not unusual in the 1980s for us to have acquired, for any museum to have acquired something without really probing more deeply into its ownership history and jewellery in particular is very, very hard to trace. A few years ago, a scholar suggested that the MFA review the necklace's provenance. The scholar, who wished to remain anonymous, had noticed similarities between the necklace in Boston and similar jewellery found at Bintepeler, an archaeological site in western Turkey with over 100 burial mounds. This site had been excavated in 1976, following reports of looting in the region. Seemingly, they were correct to do so. It seems that elements that made up the necklace were probably smuggled out of the country and then strung together to form the piece of jewellery you see here. The MFA senior curator of Greek and Roman art said that other clues pointed researchers in the right direction because the necklace measures only 8 inches, so it is unusually short. If they were approaching it now, they probably asked why it was so small. The Ministry for Culture and Tourism, together with the international and academic partners, is making great efforts to protect and restore Turkey's cultural heritage. The return of an object that was illegally removed from Turkey is a symbolic moment that sends a strong message to the world, emphasizing the importance of international cooperation in the protection of cultural heritage. So, there we go. How lovely. So, some things on the bus. Axe Mishi, take a lot of most of what Howard says with a grain of salt. There's some rumblings that, I'll be honest, I'm not qualified to weigh in on, and I am concerned that if I do, I have opinions, so therefore I am qualified to have an opinion, because everybody is, but it's so far out of my wheelhouse of understanding. I'm not an archaeologist, I'm not an Egyptologist, but there are some shenanigans going on with Egyptian archaeology at the moment. I'm hearing wind of shenanigans and things being questioned and hunts for tombs being queried and potentially finds being faked. There's accusations, there's mounting accusations about various groups doing archaeology in Egypt. And those various groups, their finds and in some cases their work and discipline is being questioned. So I'm watching in the hopes that there will be something definitive, because all I'm seeing at the moment is people who I respect saying something smells hinky, but as of yet, nothing out and out definitive accusation or charge, shall we say. So it's rumors. It's definitely, I'm loath to say it goes completely beyond rumor, but what I will say is a lot of people whose work and scholarship is, as far as possible to my mind, really strong, whose ethics when it comes to approaching that work are evident and clear, in my opinion, are raising the alarm. Make of that what you will. And one thing is certain is that before I had the baby and we were doing the History News Live, virtually every session there was a new find coming out of Egypt, or a promise of a new find, or something that changed Egyptian history. And it's we're going to get to the events and exhibitions because that's at the very end. But I'll just do a spoiler. At long last, it appears the Grand Egyptian Museum is actually open. Egad's alive. Who can even believe it's fine? I thought it was a myth. I thought they were trolling us with websites and some such, but it does seem to be actually open. You can, in fact, book tickets. And so in a way, I sort of understood this money being funneled into the archaeology because they have a museum that's really expensive to promote. But there are rumours, soft allegations of corners being cut, of fines being oversold, that makes me uncomfortable. So I'll keep my eyes on it. You do the same. If you see something, let me know. We are now on to new news, and we're going to Egypt. Archaeologists discover an intricately decorated coffins belonging to the only daughter of an ancient Egyptian governor. This is a 4,000-year-old burial chamber that features hieroglyphs referring to the woman known as Idi as the lady of the house. She is buried inside two coffins, one stacked inside of the other, and it's covered in intricate decorations. It dates to the Middle Kingdom, which stretched from around 2030 to 1650 BCE. The Egyptologist at UCLA, Kathleen Cooney, explains, quote, finding two intact Middle Kingdom coffins is extraordinary. Apparently these coffins, quote, not only seem well preserved, but covered with intricate coffin texts that help the deceased find their way in the realm of the underworld. According to a statement from the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, archaeologists found the chamber near the tomb belonging to her father, who served as the governor of the prosperous Asiat region, which is located along the Nile River. His burial was said to be the largest non-royal tomb built during the period. Researchers have found that the daughter's burial chamber is nearly 50 feet below the ground, but it does appear to have been pilfered by ancient grave robbers. It still does contain the woman's two coffins, which are engraved and painted both inside and out. They've analysed her skeleton and they think that she died before the age of 40 and perhaps had a congenital defect in one of her feet. They also found several small artefacts, including a canopic jar. And there are also two painted wooden statuettes. One of the figures may even be a representation of the woman herself, Idi. Brian, hasn't the whole plan to build New Cairo? That's ringing a bell. About a new, I haven't heard that mentioned, but you've written that. That's ringing a bell. But the discussion of New Cairo has gone away. The museum is there. That's open. We're going to talk about that at the end of the video when we talk about events and exhibitions. So, but yeah, New Cairo rings a bell. Elverta, thank you so much for the super sticker. That is really kind of you. Thank you very much. You're very generous. We're going to hop on some more new news. We're hopping to the Bronze Age. Look at this. Isn't that gorgeous? So this necklace is a combination of original and recreated pieces. It is 4,000 years old. It's Bronze Age, and it is believed to have been worn by a Scottish woman of wealth. It's now on display for the first time in 4,000 years. It was found in a burial site in 1870 near Dundee. Conservators have combined the original beads with recreations to return the item to the original state, or its believed original state. It's now on display at Dundee's McManus Art Gallery and Museum. If you are in Dundee and near the museum and you get a chance to check it out, let me know what you think. It's been described by the senior curator Matthew Knight as, quote, essentially a jigsaw puzzle. It was part of a jewellery set that was buried with the dead, and the restoration included several layers of analysis, including x-rays of the beads to understand how they were made. People are generally interested in these discoveries. They tell us so much about human nature and about the people that lived in Scotland before us. They are described as being very elaborate, high-status objects. It's thought the person who owned and wore it was well respected in the society. And it's suggestive of a fairly rich community of people that were living there, possibly as a result of the quality of the agricultural land they were living on. They found 42 jet beads and 9 jet plates. It was thought that these beads originally came from a single piece of jewellery, but it's now thought they belong to a matching bracelet and necklace set. The plates are decorated with intricate board dot designs, indicating they were valuable pieces. There is evidence of wear on the larger plates, a sign that this was worn frequently. I mean, if you owned it, you would, wouldn't you? It's in great condition. Cast beads were taken, and 66 new ones were made from resin plaster that could then be painted. And apparently it took 50 hours to complete the project, which of course is now on display, and it is just fabulous. What a fabulous thing. Our next piece of new news is not ding dong, although it is destructive, and it's one of those things, you know, when something happens to somebody else and your entire skin crawls because what you are learning of happening to somebody else is literally your worst nightmare. That is what this story is for me. This is what that is for me, as somebody who frequently takes small humans into heritage sites, and I bark at them like I am a sheepdog because, well, not them, Dominic's not walking yet, but the phrase "look with your eyes, not with your hands" is oft repeated. And so when there are tactile objects in museums, that's great. But then you have to go, you can touch this, but this other thing that looks exactly the same, do not touch it. which is it's hard when you're 4 and things are really shiny. I get that. And he does love museums, and also pirate ships. He loves a galleon. Kid loves a cannon. What can I say? We went on the when Dominic, he can't have been more than about 3 weeks old. He was strapped to the front of me, and the Andalusian, the galleon, sailed under Tower Bridge and parked up in St. Catherine's Docks. It was there for a week, and it was either the last day or the day before the last day. We took Gabriel, and I was wearing Dominic, and we went on this galleon, and it was absolutely heaving. But that kid had the time of his life on the galleon. Oh, he loved it so much. And the week before, we'd gone to the National Maritime Museum, and they've got a fabulous playground. So the National Maritime Museum, unless you're going to a paid exhibition, it's free to enter. And they have this incredible playground called the Cove, which is like, it looks like a pirate ship. And it's just brilliant. The kids absolutely loved it. And then we went in to the Maritime Museum, went up to the Tudor and Stuart room. He'd done a Tudor day at his nursery. And so we walked in and he'd looking around, and it's clearly something triggered for him, because he went, "Where are the pirates, Mummy? Where are the pirates?" And there was a room guide in there. And I said, "No, darling, they like to be called privateers, not pirates." So, but this remains. This is a 3,500-year-old vase smashed by a 4-year-old boy. Do you know what makes me feel sweaty? It actually makes me feel sweaty, the thought of it. So this is the Hecht Museum in Haifa. And this is a Bronze Age bit of crockery. And it was in a place where they did not have glass in front of it, obviously. So apparently the boy pulled the jar slightly because he wanted to see what was inside. And as he did, it fell down. The boy freaked out. I'm sure the father also freaked out. Apparently the museum has invited the child back to the exhibition, and has invited them to have a look again. There is a follow-up piece of news that I will be showing you. It's thought that this jar was probably intended to carry local supplies such as wine and olive oil. It'd be more difficult now it's in pieces. It predates the time of the biblical King David and King Solomon, so that's good. The Hecht Museum is on the grounds of the University of Haifa in northern Israel, and it collects items, archaeology, and art. So you've got a before and after pic. How it looked, and how it didn't look anymore. It just makes me feel a bit sweaty. Hannah, a nursery with a Tudor date. Well, yes and no. I got sent a series of text messages saying they were having a history day. And I was told that my child should wear a historical costume that was described as being Tudor Victorian. Those are wildly different things. Turns out it was Tudor. But yeah, he did a little Tudor rose that he made and stuff like that. So that was incredibly cool. And he learned all about pirates. Apparently, his school play for Christmas was the Wizard of Oz. He was the lion. He did his line beautifully. I am the lion, and I need courage. Perfect. Loved his work. And potentially, we've been looking at primary schools because he starts school in September. And one of the primary schools, they took their older children on a trip to the British Museum. And I was interested. Immediately, my ears pricked up because apparently the question they were asking these primary school children, so these are kids under 11 and under, the question they were asking them was about whether or not the Benin bronzes should be returned. And I thought to myself, well, my, this is not a school that I would like my child to go to. It certainly is. So the update on this is that he was taken back to see how the museum was fixing what he'd smashed to smithereens. Yes, Kiwi Green, you're right. This museum is one of the few places that believes in having no obstructions between you and the artifact. And I think that's incredible. And equally, I'm glad they were understanding, because when you do that, this is a risk. This is a risk that happens. It doesn't mean that I would not want to unzip my skin and climb out if it was my kid. So this is the youngest of his three kids. Oh, of course it is. Of course it is. Because it would never be an older child. Or it would never be an only child, would it? Because we're on them. We're on top of those kids. But speaking as someone who now has a second child, it gets lax. you get lax. You do get lax. But the mum said she was embarrassed. He said he just wanted to see what was inside. Oh, bless. But yeah, so apparently there were lots of kids. They are using 3D technology and high-res videos to put the jar back together. And apparently it could be back on display as soon as next week. I think it's great they've turned this into a learning opportunity, that they are showing this child and I think his older siblings how they're restoring it, and it also seeing all of the technology that's on hand. I mean, it would be great, as Chris points out, wouldn't it be great if he turns into a master restorer when he grows up? The way this has been, like the experience of the jar being broken is horrendous, and it makes everybody feel a bit clammy and ill. But the way this has been handled, seemingly by everybody involved, like the parent horrified, but ultimately admitting their responsibility, their part in it, that they were slightly distracted, that they couldn't even believe it was their child. The museum saying, these things happen, come in, let's see how we're restoring it. I think an awful thing took place that could have been so much worse if people started blaming each other and started, talking about financial suing here, there, and the criminal charges, blah, blah, blah. They could have really messed it up. The way it's been handled, I think, is the best. They've made the best out of a bad situation. Axe Bishy, it does sound like they're trying to make it as positive as can be, and I think it puts the museum in a really good light. They must have been aware that this was always a possibility. When you don't put things behind glass, it's always going to be a possibility. You don't want it to happen, but clearly your curators think the value of that closeness, that access, is worth the risk of what ultimately happened. And fair enough. Frescoes found in a small house in Pompeii. And they look very sweet, these little frescoes. So it's been named as the House of Phaedra, the mythological queen of Athens. She is depicted in one of the paintings with her stepson, Hippolytus. He is the one who refuses her advances. The other wall paintings depict patterns, scenes of nature, an encounter between a satyr and a nymph, and they think there's also potentially a representation of Venus and Adonis, and they do look very lovely. So what the little image that you see on the blue background, that is the image depicting Phaedra and Hippolytus from the House of Phaedra. And then above it, you've got what appears to be a lion from the house as well. Not quite sure if this is accessible to the public. The article doesn't say. I assume, though, as they are advertising it, if it's not yet, it will be soon. A 1,000-year-old ring has been found, and it comes from a Pictish fort in Scotland. And it is, do you know what? It looks very like something that I would have worn in my late teens. I liked a lot of silver rings and black eyeliner and tattoos. So yes, this reminds me of being 15 and spending my time down around Camden Lock and in baggy jeans, lots of silver rings, black eyeliner, various bangles on one's wrists, and entirely too young to be having the tattoos that I had. But nevertheless, we persist. So John Ralph, who's an alumnus of the smoking clove cigarettes? No, babe. I was smoking real cigarettes. I started smoking Marlboro Lights at 13 on a French exchange, which is also the first time that I drank an espresso, and I could have climbed onto the ceiling. So yes. I mean, I was trying on various things and looks, and occasionally I was a bit gothy. Other times I was a bit rocky, punky. I just, tried I tried on a lot of things. Kiwi green, it's either garnet or red glass. So I'm assuming they haven't fully analysed it, because I'm guessing if they had, they would know that. So this was found by a retired engineer and alumni of the University of Aberdeen, John Ralph. He found it buried in the remnants of a home site that was once part of Burghead Fort. This is a Pictish site located on a promontory. It's now part of the town of Burghead, which was built in the 1800s. In the case of this metal ring, archaeologists have noticed that there's either a piece of garnet or red glass in its centre. There are very few Pictish rings ever been discovered, and those they do know about come from hordes, which were placed in the ground deliberately for safekeeping in some way. The Professor of Archaeology at the University of Aberdeen, Gordon Noble, said they certainly weren't expected to find something like this lying around on the floor of what was once a house. He said that their team has found other evidence of metalworking, but this is a further indicator of the high status production of metalwork that adds to growing evidence that Burghead was a really significant seat of power in the Pictish period. Jessie says that Gabriel was almost old enough for his first metal detector. And do you know what? You are partially correct. However, that boy was given like a little cleaning set, had like a fake vacuum, but it also had a real broom and a real dustpan. And I think a little handheld broom is quite like a metal detector. And he is incapable of pointing that broom at the floor. The amount of times he has nearly given me a black eye because he's swinging it around like he's about to do the hammer toss. I'm not going to give him another weighted stick. I'm just not. Nita, I have not smoked for over a decade. I quit smoking, actually, it's probably close to 15 years. I quit smoking not long after, about 4 or 5 years after I quit alcohol. I quit through vaping. I no longer vape either. So no, I no longer smoke. I do still have the tattoos. That is the remnant of my misspent youth. Medusa, I was also punkish, except when I went to nightclubs at 15, when I was also too young to be. At which point I was just in the smallest clothes I could possibly get because I was 15. I didn't want anybody to ask me for ID, so I thought, go essentially naked. they'll let you in. And you know what they did? You know what, my husband's texting me. That's probably not a good. Oh, he's sent me October 2013. Yes, that's when I quit smoking. October 2013. So there we go. Weezy, if only everything becomes a sword. For him, it's a Moana oar, and we are all Maui. We will board your boat. So he sort of swings it right at your face. Steve's here. Hello, Steve. Thank you for sending the picture. Everyone's been saying how wonderful it is. I thought my husband was going to be saying something about my misspent youth. It's not a secret. He knows. He's seen it. Carol, if you put a sock on the opposite end of the brush, you can make the broom into a hobby horse. And do you know what we'll have then? Then it will be Elsa's water knock, and he will attempt to dive into any body of water he can find with a broom with the sock between his legs. Everything I have that child, I think, in what way is this going to be used as some form of way to injure you, me, everybody? Jamie's just sent me a text going, tattoos. Yes, Steve has pointed out taking the picture of Tewkesbury with the drone. Steve, nobody guessed where we were, but they are all incredibly impressed with the quality of the picture. Kiwi Green, another person with a misspent youth. 16 for 13, 16 for the tattoo. In the back of an 18-wheeler truck. Oh, yeah. I have got a tramp stamp. Because it was the noughties. I've got a tribal tramp stamp. Manda, we have in fact ruled out schools that don't do theatre and music for that very reason, because we have got ourselves a little thespian on our hands. Another Viking Age treasure. Another find in Scotland. Scotland is doing the most in this History News Live. This is the star object of the Galloway Hoard. This was the richest collection of Viking Age object ever found in Britain and Ireland, buried in 900 AD, and then later unearthed in a field in Scotland. Identified as being of West Asian origin, transported halfway around the world more than 1,000 years ago. It is unspeakably beautiful. What an incredible piece. So it was found a decade ago, wrapped in its ancient textiles, the survival of which is amazing, frankly. So the surface can only be seen through X-rays. The textiles have since been partially removed and preserved, and the vessel has been laser cleaned to remove green corrosion over much of its silver surface. It's also undergone scientific analysis. The design includes crowns, fire altars, leopards, and tigers. This is iconography that is linked to Zoroastrianism, which is the state religion of the Sasanian Empire, which is the last Persian empire before the early Muslim conquests. This horde was discovered in 2014 by a metal detector enthusiast on what's now Church of Scotland land at Kirkcudbrightshire. This is one of the century's most important archaeological finds. It's got more than 5 kilograms of silver, gold, and other materials. They've got things ranging from Christian pectoral crosses all the way to brooches, and this just amazing thing. The National Museum of Scotland was allocated it, and they are going to announce the findings on it, or they may already have done so. It's just the most phenomenal piece. It travelled thousands of miles to reach southwest Scotland. It's very hard to know what a Christian living in the area might have made of the object unless they knew how it got there. They know people were certainly making pilgrimages to the Holy Land. When you've travelled that distance, you're not actually that far away from where the vessel came from. It's an alloy of silver and relatively pure copper. So this is typical of the silver of the area, but not of contemporary European silver. The isotopes of the lead contained within the silver material and the niello match ore they match ore from Iran. Niello, I'm not quite sure what niello is. They can go so far back to say that this niello derives from a famous mine in central Iran. Does anybody know what niello is? Because I'm not sure. So this is essentially scientific confirmation of the distant origins of the object. It's going to go on long-term display at the National Museum of Scotland in Edinburgh, but a significant portion is also going to be displayed long-term at the Kirkcudbright galleries. So if you happen to be in and around those locations, you can go and see this fabulous piece and the things it was found with. Nicole, I think people like to assume people didn't get around back in the day, but they definitely did. They absolutely did. They absolutely did. So when Edward, King Edward I, is building out the Tower of London site further and further, we have ideas about the kind of paints he used and also the paints that were accessible to England and Europe at that time. And before, indeed. And that very bright blue that typically finds its way onto garments associated with the Virgin Mary very often. To get that blue, you have to go to Afghanistan. So the trade routes are, this is not some absolutely cut off world where they are trading with each other all the time. Julesy has given an explanation of what this niello is. A black mixture of sulfur, copper, silver, and lead used as an inlay on engraved etched metal, especially silver. Okay, so it would have been this patterning that we're seeing. Fabulous. Medusa, absolutely. Lapis does make blue, but and that's it. To get that lapis, it's Afghanistan. So incredible. Brian, the guy in the third picture looks like he's having a semi-religious experience, and quite frankly, I don't blame him. I would be if I held in my sweaty gloved hands that object, I think my face would be doing something similar. In fact, I'd probably look a little bit more excited. It's very much giving the One Ring, my precious, but I think I feel the same. I think I'd feel the same. Next up, vulva stone. It's not ding dong news, it's vulva news. This is vulva stone and coin jewellery We've got some more Viking finds. This is at a burial site in Norway. 3 Viking graves were excavated in Norway, containing coins from distant lands and an oddly symbolic stone carved to look like female genitalia. The graves, which seemed to belong to women, were found on the west coast of Norway by metal detectorists. They date back to the early 800s AD. It's referred to as being a small treasure trove. These graves are thought to be just 3 or perhaps 20 at the site. The bones of the inhabitants have long since disintegrated, but their grave goods, the brooches, glass beads, coins, and stones arranged in the shape of a boat, remain. Some of the jewellery and coins originated as far away as Ireland, England, and the Frankish Empire, which at that time covered much of Western Europe. The most striking find is a coin from southern Denmark, stamped with a Viking boat on one side and a stag on the other. This is evidence of, once again, long-distance trade and migration occurring in Viking societies at the time. It's the women in the graves had some connection to continental Europe, and it's probably no coincidence they may have come from abroad and may well have married into the local community. So this was a farm at the time, presumably of maybe belonging to a local king, the researchers say. Not far from the coast, a waypoint for travellers. One of the women was buried with rocks in the shape of a 13-foot-long boat, a way of accompanying her into the afterlife. They also found at the spot where the mast would have been, a stone shaped like a vulva, which may have been used to symbolise a woman buried in the grave. Perhaps, the team suggests, the woman wasn't buried there at all, but the grave was a cenotaph, a memorial without a body. I mean, could even be for a sunken ship, could it not? The boat grave also included wool shears, a hetchel, which is a comb used to prepare fibres for spinning and weaving, a spindle whorl, and a weaving sword, which all of this is used to make textiles. There's also a bronze key. This is suggesting this woman in the grave was dedicated to, was a high status person, because textile making is prestigious. The key indicates that she was the head of the household. Quote, if not members of the elite, these women were certainly high up the social and economic hierarchy. Do women archaeologists think this is a vulva stone? Let me see the names of the archaeologists. Soren Dinhoff. Soren's a boy name, isn't it? Soren would be a boy name. Yes, it's a he. But another archaeologist working from the University of Oslo, Unn Pendersen, is female. So I don't know who thinks it's a vulva, but it certainly got the headlines, didn't it? So well done for them. My husband pointing out, but by that time the Viking trading routes with Rus Vikings were already well established. The Vikings were working, living in Constantinople. Easy to imagine the Eastern goods were very present in their world, absolutely. And he points out, if it was buried, it's probably considered as valuable, so there must be some appreciation of its origin. So I suppose they've ruled out it being as it goes with textiles. I mean, presumably if it was a sharpening stone, it would come with something else as well. So clearly it's of value. So yes, hopefully we'll find out some more about it as the research continues. A rare Durer artwork found at a tip has been sold for £26,500. A 500-year-old engraving by Renaissance artist Albrecht Durer, which is said to have been found at a tip, has just been sold at auction. It was found by Matt Winter from Cranbrook in Kent. He discovered the artwork when he was 11 and was unaware of its value until he took it to a specialist as an adult. Its title, Night, Death and the Devil, dated to 1513. And it was sold in an online auction by Rare Book Auctions. It's going to a private collector in Germany, and therefore it's essentially like this print is going home. The bidder paid, including the buyer's premium, £33,390 for the engraving. It was listed with a guide price of between £10,000 to £20,000. Mr. Winter has been contacted for comment following the sale. Before the auction, he said he saw the work in the back of a woman's car while at the rubbish dump as a child, and he asked her if he could take it. It had so much detail to it. Something told me it was worth something, but I never really knew what. Well, apparently quite a lot. Mr. Spencer said it was the perfect end to a story that started with Matt Winter rescuing this from landfill. The final testament to the enduring importance of Albrecht Durer. Everybody is really pleased with the outcome, and I'm sure that the person who sold it is particularly pleased with the outcome. I know I would be. A 500-year-old miniature portrait has been identified as Mary Tudor. A comparison of portraits of Mary with Henry's sixth wife, Catherine Parr, has now led to this confusion. Kiwi Green, you love that Jamie's participating. Hi, Mr. Dr. Reading the Past. Hello, Mr. Dr. Cat. He's on the telephone. I'm assuming that means he says hello, Kiwi Green. I'm assuming that means the children are not being little monsters. So that's good. The historian Emma Rutherford has pointed to the noses of the two women. They point to Mary's nose being frankly rather bulbous and upturned, while Parr's was more aquiline. This has led to the confusion, backed by vital new evidence about dress and jewellery items that is pointing to this being Mary in her 20s, so 6 or 7 years younger than the 1540s miniature. Rutherford became doubtful this was a portrait of Parr when curating a new exhibition. Initially, she made comparisons with other portraits of two royal women. The most noted is Master John's full-length picture that's owned by the National Portrait Gallery. There is a miniature of her at Sudeley Castle where she's died and buried, but the best-known image of Mary is as a queen in the 1550s. That's by Antonis More, and that's in the Prado Museum of Madrid. And there's also one by Hans Eweth in the National Portrait Gallery. What confuses matters is that both women had reddish hair and blue eyes. They were and when their paintings are being done, their miniatures being done, they're both around the age of 30. They wore similar clothes, although Parr was normally more dressed up. That's what Dr. Owen Emerson points out. And Catherine Parr, for all of her reforming, strip the altars leaning, she loved beautiful jewellery and fine clothes, and what that is testified to in the full-length portrait of her. The cross that she is wearing is similar to one that Mary has in a small portrait in the National Portrait Gallery, 4 diamonds and 3 pearl pendants. And while individuals do have jewellery that is specific to them, it's not beyond the realms. Just throwing cat amongst pigeons, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that a stepmother who is a similar age to you, who had been in your household previously, who was a friend, it is possible that jewellery for portraits might share between hands. I mean, in terms of when portraits are being produced, there are always questions about how long people actually sit for them. Does the portrait painter take a rough sketch of the face, a la Hans Holbein, and then get sent clothing to put on the painted body they're depicting? In which case, is it beyond the realms of possibility that somebody might lend a necklace for a painting that's being done? I don't know, possibly. However, the noses are clearly different. The retrousse nature of the nose is distinctly different to what we see in Catherine Parr. Additionally, Parr, who was Queen Consort, had petitioned Henry so that both of his daughters could eventually accede to the throne, was a great lover of arts. It's entirely possible the miniature was commissioned by Catherine herself, says Emerson, and I think that's really likely. This painting is dated to 1546. Catherine Parr goes on a bit of a miniature creating spree in the last few years of her husband's life, 1546, 1547. She creates miniatures of herself. She has miniatures of herself, her husband, and Edward created. I think it's entirely likely that she would have added the other children to that. My belief is that Catherine's actions after the death of Henry are consistent with somebody who is playing for a role in political power. And in that, I include her decision to marry Seymour, what has so often been presented by historians as simply a woman finally marrying for love. I think there's totally an element of that. He's an attractive man for the first time. He's somebody that she actually actively wants to marry for personal desire. I think that's totally a factor. But she is a woman with a good head on her shoulders. The length of time waited is indecent. And I don't believe that Catherine is somebody who loses her head so fast because a pretty man tips the wink for her. I think that Catherine was offended and astonished that Lord Protector Somerset got both control of the council for Edward's regency, but also control of the king's person. I think that Catherine, in her art and miniature making, in her interest in the education of the children, in her decision to take on Elizabeth, I think she was looking to create a royal nursery. The fact that Thomas Seymour had the wardship of their cousin, Jane Grey, and that means there's another royal child in the household. I think that Catherine was making a play to take physical custody of Edward. And I think she believed that having his favoured uncle as her spouse could be a way to do that. That's what I think was going on. And she's having these paintings created because it shows to everybody that she is part of the continuity of the Tudor household. She is Edward's Mater Carissima, his beloved mother. He writes to her Mater Carissima in Latin, beloved mother. Nicola, I think it could absolutely be a bit of both power and love, but I think the timing is more driven by a desire for political power and for relevancy. And also perhaps because she thought it was what was best for a boy that I do believe she loved. I think that the speed with which she married Seymour is down to making a play for power, because she could have waited a more seemly time. But she felt like, I believe that waiting longer would have meant that any chance of making that play to take custody of Edward would have flown by the wayside. And I do wonder what might have happened if she hadn't gotten pregnant and hadn't died in childbed. If she had lived long enough, potentially, to see the fall of Somerset, I think she had the capacity to be a big player, personally. He did fluff everything when he tried to seize Edward, because I think this happens after Catherine's death. It all goes down the Swanee, because I think that while Seymour is potentially politically useful for her, and attractive to her. And while he is Edward's favourite uncle, she's got him on a short leash. I think he gets reckless after her death, and it does what it does. I think after the death of her husband before Henry, there is talk that she is potentially going to contract the marriage with Seymour. I think that was personally agreeable to her. She was, by that point, by Tudor standards, a woman of a certain age who had not yet borne children, despite being married by that point twice previously. I think she almost certainly wanted to have children. So he is a fairly good bet. He is also, of course, close to the throne. So even when there's that question of courtship, his sister is the mother of Henry's heir. So does she love him for him and his personal attributes and the fact that he's a very sexy boy? Or would she have fancied him if he were herding sheep in the fields? Probably not. I think in the Tudor court, it might be love, but they're always considering power too. Because that's the job, isn't it, really? Brian, that's very interesting. If Jane Grey had been Edward VI's queen consort and widow, would she have been placed on the throne? I wonder if that would have helped. That's really interesting. Well, certainly, I think the public, if she'd married him and if there'd been a large-scale wedding ceremony, then people at least would have known her a little bit better. They wouldn't have had to go to quite the same lengths of being like, here's Jane Grey as your new queen, and we're going to have to publish a whole bunch of family trees so that you can know who everybody is. I think there's... Yeah, really weird. But also, I think that there are things that go on at court in sort of masking and misrule relationships and in flirtations and the blurring of boundaries and all of that kind of stuff that probably wouldn't have seemed that weird. But yeah, I think it would have been odd. Yes, James pointed out a video suggestion based on that topic in the chat. Yes, I'll make a note of that. We are hopping over to Jamestown, the US. I almost said Jamestown. That's very different. And they have solved the mystery behind a black tombstone found in Jamestown that carries an English knight. This is a centuries-old mystery, the oldest known tombstone in the United States. This tombstone likely came from Belgium, but was erected in 1627 in Jamestown. The study that's looked into this, which is found in the International Journal of Historical Archaeology, have analysed the carvings and inlays of the structure to determine its country of origin. There is still some mystery involved. They don't know exactly where in Europe the limestone slab of the tombstone originated. But fragments of the tombstone did contain fossil fossil microbes. The baby brain is kicking in, which were not native to North America. The microbe fossils were found in present-day Belgium and Ireland. Therefore, the knight's tombstone had to be imported from Europe, and the suggested place is Belgium. They think it was quarried and cut to size in Belgium, shipped down the Meuse River, across the English Channel to London, where it was carved and the brass inlays installed before finally being shipped on to Jamestown. A carved depression in the container suggests the presence of a brass inlays of a shield, an open scroll, and the likeness of an armoured man. 2 knights did die in the colony in the 17th century. There was Sir Thomas West, who died in 1618, and Sir George Yardley, these people may be candidates for the anonymous knight. Sir Yardley's step-grandson purchased a tombstone for himself in the 1680s, bearing an identical inscription to the 1627 black limestone one. The senior Yardley was born in Southwark, England in 1588, so Armada year, and he landed in Jamestown in 1610 after a shipwreck near Bermuda. He was then knighted by King James I when he returned to England in 1617, but he was a salty sea dog and he went back across the waves back to Jamestown in 1621. He died there in 1627. The study concludes with the following quote: successful Virginia colonists who had lived in London would have been familiar with the latest English fashions and tried to replicate those in the colonies. So that is what is happening. Interesting. A 17th century samurai sword has been discovered in Berlin. This is archaeologists from the State Office of Berlin for Monument Preservation. They have found a 17th century Japanese short sword, I'm going to butcher this, known as a wakizashi. This has been found in wartime rubble in Berlin's Malcolm Market, which is a historic area that's currently under excavation. So this is typically carried by samurai in feudal Japan. It was found in the basement of a residential building. It was initially mistaken for a parade weapon, but its true significance was discovered during restoration efforts. The handle, although damaged by heat, revealed intricate motifs of a Japanese deity associated with fortune and prosperity. The Matthias Wormhoff, who is Berlin state archaeologist, said, quote, who could have imagined that at a time when Japan was isolated and hardly any European traveller had entered the country, such a long-used and richly decorated weapon would find its way to Berlin. This dates to the Edo period, so between the 17th and the 19th century, but it could potentially come from as early as the 16th century. The prevailing theory is that this may have been a diplomatic gift from one of the Japanese delegations that visited Berlin in the 19th century. So it's possible this was presented as a gift to a dignitary. There are, however, other possibilities. Perhaps this arrived in Berlin even earlier, during a period when Japan was still largely isolated from the Western world. This would be quite tantalizing, given the limited contact between Japan and Europe before 1868. The proximity of the Malcolm Market to Berlin's royal palace, where Emperor Wilhelm I received Japanese envoys, supports the theory of a diplomatic gift. However, no concrete evidence links the sword to the residence of the Strana Strafa at the time, and presumably a diplomatic gift from that late would it not be detailed and listed? Perhaps. I mean, they are better at keeping records in the 19th century, although not like we are now, but still better. This is now the sword has now been carefully restored, and it's going to be displayed for the first time at the Samurai Museum in Berlin during Long Night of Museums. The mystery of the journey to Berlin of the sword's journey to Berlin may never be solved, but its discovery does serve as a reminder of the enduring connections between cultures. Vermhoff puts it, we are unlikely to find another object exactly like this one. And a painting attributed to Rembrandt has been found in an attic in Maine. People, check your attics, check your basements, check your crawl spaces, check the back of the door of Grand's house. Look, you've just had Thanksgiving over there. You've just had Christmas. I hope we were all poking around in our elderly relatives' houses to see that none of them haven't, sneakily got a Picasso or a Rembrandt or a Van Gogh just, I don't know, above the cooker. This is known as Portrait of a Girl. And it was for many years a forgotten painting in an attic in Maine. A label back of the frame connected it to Rembrandt. A few weeks ago, that artwork sold for $1.41 million at auction. This was found during a routine house call at a private estate in Maine. They pointed out that on their house calls, they often go in blind, not knowing what they'll find. The home was filled with wonderful pieces, but it was in the attic, among stacks of art, that we found this remarkable portrait. Good Lord. It was tucked away alongside a collection of heirlooms and antiques. Apparently, this painting displayed impeccable preservation for its age. You can see the label on the back. It does attribute the artwork to Rembrandt, and it is from the Philadelphia Museum of Art. It was loaned to the Philadelphia Museum of Art in 1970. No one is sure how it reached the attic. So there were 3 phone bidders who aggressively pursued the artwork, and apparently it eventually went for the price I just determined. This it points out that artworks of this kind are rarely discovered in the United States. I mean, I'm fairly sure we've heard about a few in recent months. The person who bought the painting for $1.4 million already got a great bargain. I think the value of this painting is probably in the area of $15 million, which to me says the auction house put it on for the wrong price. That should have had a reserve on it, perhaps. For decades, the art authentication business has been hearing from people who think they might be in possession of a Rembrandt, but they're often disappointed. Winter tells the Times, quote, "We don't discover new paintings by Rembrandt every day." But you did on that day, didn't you? So there we go. Medusa says, did anybody get along with the Puritans? Seemingly not. They don't even appear to have liked each other much, do they? So, I think everybody just needed a bit of cake. They might have been happier. So what happens when you don't get theatre or any joy at all? Go and see a play, have a bit of cake. You'll feel happier. Chris found a 1970s action man in the attic with the eagle eyes. Only had one leg. A treasure nevertheless. A treasure nevertheless. Eobact, they don't know. It was on loan. It was lent by, I'm looking at the label, a Mr. Carey W. Bach, I think, or Bach. So it was lent to the Philadelphia Museum of Art. They didn't mention anything about being reported stolen. And what they did say is they didn't know how it got to the attic. Medusa says, my neighbour found porn in a crawl space. Well, depends on the age of it. Could be a collector's item one day. So I'm fairly sure that some of that really old-fashioned, old photographic Victorian Edwardian pornography goes for a pretty penny at auction. Your brother dropped some G.I. Joes down the... What? From the roof? Was your brother on the roof with the G.I. Joes dropping them down the chimney? Seriously, it's just my generation of parents that watch our kids, I swear. Weren't there those adverts? I know they happen in the States. I don't think they happen in the UK, but I know you had adverts in the States in like the 80s being like, parents, it's 10 o'clock at night. Do you know where your children are? I'm sorry. What? Parents, it's 10 o'clock at night. Do you know where your children are? Yes, we've low-jacked them. Of course we have. Jessie, we used to jump off the pool and the roof into the pool in the night. Of course. In the same way that I spent most of the early aughts in a park drinking, if it wasn't a nightclub, on a park slide, drinking probably illegal alcohol with people I shouldn't have been with. And I didn't have a mobile phone. I was just out. No one cared. We used to go to a payphone, and they still had those. And in the UK, you used to be able to reverse charge call like you were in prison. So you'd dial a number and you'd speak to the operator and you'd ask for reverse charges to your mum. And they'd call your house phone and they'd say, will you accept the phone call, reverse charges? And then you'd say, Mum, I'm in a park. It's 1 a.m. Can you come and get me? And she'd be like, yeah, all right. Boom. So kids don't know. They're going to be soft. My husband's worried that he's pleased we haven't got a chimney because our eldest is very keen on sending Moana to Lalatai, which involves a long drop. So it's very relieving that we haven't got a chimney because he'd shin up a drain pipe, that kid. Yeah, Nicola, youth is meant to be misspent. We look back on it and think, how do I survive that? Do you know? Yeah, here's the thing. We are going to be, but I think that looking around at my friends who are parenting and many are parenting older children, we have low-jacked those kids. They've all got an Apple AirTag on. They're sewn into their garments. We've low-jacked our children because every single one of us was drinking White Lightning in a park when we shouldn't have been. I was famous for going, it's probably okay. Getting into taxis. They weren't taxis. It was just a bloke who stood by Covent Garden or Leicester Square and was like, if you give me 20 quid, I'll drive you back to North London. And we would get in their car. Just get in their car. No one knew who we were. We were 15 and drunk. You were helicopter parenting in the 90s. Is that just regular parenting now? Yeah, it is, because if you were raised in, if you were born in the 80s and raised in the loosest possible sense of the term, your youth. I look back on my time and go, it's a miracle I'm alive. It's a miracle I'm alive. Brian, in recent reenactments, have I ever worn one of those collars? Looks anything but comfortable. I have in the past gone full rough. And it is for me. I'm slightly allergic. I'm slightly allergic to starch, so it may be more comfortable if you're not allergic to starch. But it did used to bring me out in the most delicious rash. So what I had to do was get a little white polo neck thing to wear underneath it, because it actually created the allergy created like an open wound on my neck. So I had to try and hide that. But wearing a ruff, a velvet doublet, a wool skirt, all of the underpinnings, plus a polo neck and a hat in the height of summer, it's an experience. I could see through time and space. I'll tell you that for free. PistolAnnie, we had white lightning. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And then when we got a bit older, we had off-brand vodka that I'm not 100% sure wasn't just methanol. No, I'm not 100% sure it wasn't just meth. Jessie, is there a reason why it's called a ruff? I believe it's because it's ruffled. That was my understanding. But now I need to go and look that up. So I just need to text. My husband just texted me going, Katrina makes bad choices, correct? And he said, your mum will come and get you from a park. Mine ate wild mushrooms from a pavement in Stevenage when pregnant with me. Hashtag different worlds. It's a miracle any of us are alive. What didn't kill us gave me a reason to go to therapy. Hi, I've got trauma. How are you? Whoop whoop. Oh dear. That was the mushrooms thing was a Christmas revelation. It is fabulous, the things we learn. Sometimes it's best for them not to share. Hannah, you weren't allowed to go to the park behind your house, Tween. Your parents blame the Madeleine McCann situation when I asked about it. Hannah, you were a baby then. Because I was. There was always a kid being snatched, but I mean, my mum, right? My mum gave evidence against a child kidnapper. He was already in prison, but he was about to get released. And he'd been through the garage that she ran. And so she had some evidence that could potentially help to keep him in prison so that he would die there. And so she was flown over to Ireland to give evidence in a case that ultimately did end up with him staying in prison. So she actually was involved loosely in the case against the child serial killer, Robert Black. But that still didn't necessarily stop me, in her eyes, from going out on the lash the child. So I like to call them life skills. Yeah, we could call them. Do you know what? I do actually worry about kids now who aren't allowed to walk to school by themselves at 16 or get the bus at 16. Because what are they going to do when they are let loose, when the leash is off? Oh yeah, they let us care for other people's children when we were kids as well. That is wild. The thought that I would leave. I think I was 14 or 15, but he was like 6. The notion that in 2 years' time I would leave my kid with a 16-year-old. Nah. Nah. Your mum's friend had an encounter with Ramirez, which made your mother-in-law understandably paranoid when she had kids. That's going to do it. That will do the trick. That will do the trick. Okay. Arrowheads been found in Kansas. If you do find them, don't touch them. Look with your eyes, not with your hands. Finding an arrowhead or other relic of the past in Kansas is an exciting experience, but we are being told to leave it where it is. Kansas state archaeologist Nikki Klarman has said that if people find an arrowhead or similar artifact of Native American origin when they're out in the great outdoors, they should think twice before removing it from the area in which it's found. taking these artifacts from the wild instead of encouraging people to engage in catch and release practices. So she's saying don't take them out, just like take a picture and then mark the location with GPS on the phone and then potentially contact an archaeologist through the Kansas Historical Society. There are lots of laws guarding artifacts found in Kansas if they can be traced back to one of the nation's Native American tribes. So people have lived across what they call Kansas for thousands of years. The archaeological site locations are not disclosed to the public to help protect the properties and the artifacts found in them. They're happy to work with public on recording locations when they found items, but they can't authenticate artifacts for the public and they cannot appraise artifacts. They also say to visitors that they should not dig or collect artifact on federal land. Violations of this federal law can result in jail time and fines. So please leave artifacts alone. Take a photo if you see something and then share them with a park ranger. The artifacts that might be found are not strictly arrowheads. You could find stone tools, pottery, other relics that might be found in part of the state, depending upon where you are. But if you remove things like the arrowheads from where they're found for personal collections, it makes the job of archaeologists much more difficult because first of all, the artifacts disappear and they aren't in their context if they do show up. While it's legal to possess private collections of artifacts like arrowheads if they were purchased legally, if you have human remains or grave goods, however you purchase or acquire them, they are illegal to purchase. If you believe you have human remains or grave goods, you should contact local law enforcement or you should contact Klarman, who is the archaeologist, for more information about what to do with the items. Although people are, of course, as we know, interested in the past, it's important that we don't just willy-nilly collect them. If you have these things in your house, at some point, your descendants are going to have to determine what to do with them. Museums may have many items and may not be able to take them in the future. Archaeologists don't excavate entire sites. They test and address specific research questions, but then they think about what they want to do to preserve the site into the future. So that sometimes means items are left behind because they are part of the site and should be there. If people do have a collection of artifacts in their possession, Klarman encourages them to document the items as much as possible, including information on where they were found and how they were obtained. You should also look into the legal protections around Native American artifacts in Kansas, and there is a link you can click. And you can also find out about how archaeological research is conducted on a site by clicking another link too. That's all in the article that is linked in the description box. This is not ominy at all. A lightning strike damages Rome's ancient tourist attraction. Workers mounting a crane to secure Rome's Constantine Arch near the Colosseum after lightning loosened fragments from the ancient structure. This was a violent thunder and lightning storm that felled trees and flooded the streets that damaged the honorary arch. Fragments of white marble were gathered and secured by workers for the Colosseum Archaeological Park as soon as the storm cleared. The extent of the damage was being evaluated. The workers arrived immediately after the lightning strike, and all of the fragments were recovered and secured. Tourists, however, did find some stray fragments they did then turn over to park workers out of concern they might have fallen from the arch. Jenna Renfro, a 69-year-old tourist from the US state of Indiana, found fragments and said, "It's kind of surreal that we found pieces." Well done for handing them over, though, in a timely fashion. They were the tour guide, Serena Giuliani, who praised them for turning over the pieces because it showed great sensitivity for Roman antiquities. This arch is more than 20 meters in height, and it was erected in 315 AD, celebrating the victory of the Emperor Constantine over Maxentius following the battle at the Milvian Bridge. So there we go. It does feel like a sign, doesn't it? So that happened at the start of September. Cool. This news item out on September the 4th. So no comment. Last piece of news. Here we go. The National Archives in the US is under fire for allegedly scrubbing difficult historical events. Oh, Kiwi Green. No. So they didn't, the crane, as far as I'm aware, wasn't a lightning rod to the thing. The crane was put up really quickly after the lightning strike to put the thing back together. So it hadn't been struck previously. It was left alone. There wasn't a crane in front of it to act as a lightning rod. This just happened towards the start of September 2024. The National Archives Museum, who under the leadership of the US archivist Colleen Shogan, or Shogan, and her top advisors, have allegedly modified planned and existing exhibits involving subjects like the government's treatment of Native Americans and the history of birth control medication in favour of more anodyne subjects, according to numerous anonymous staffers who spoke to the Wall Street Journal. The museum is planning a $40 million overhaul ahead of the 2026 anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Apparently, a senior official told employees that visitors shouldn't feel confronted, they should feel welcomed. They were reportedly concerned that planned exhibits might anger Republicans who have partial oversight over the museum's budget or a potential second Trump administration. The organization's a reply to the Wall Street Journal piece was published on the blog of the organization, and it criticized the paper's misinformed perspective but did not refute any of the acts alleged in its reporting. There is one exhibit in the museum that involves a photo booth in which visitors can have their own image superimposed next to images of historic figures. Reportedly removed from this display were images of civil rights crusader Martin Luther King, labor union activist Dolores Herta, and the first Native American woman to join the Marine Corps, the Minnie Spotted Wolf. Senior aides to Shogun ordered these images removed and replaced with non-controversial shots of Republican presidents, including Richard Nixon greeting Elvis Presley and Ronald Reagan with baseball star Cal Ripken Jr. An exhibit concerning westward expansion by the US government reportedly met with criticism from Shogun, who allegedly asked, quite, why is it so much about Indians? Oh, wow. That's a direct quote. Pals. Among the artifacts removed were treaties by which Native Americans handed over land to the government. Download, screenshot, go on to your available public records and screenshot stuff. Go to your archives and photograph stuff. If everyone does a bit. Some modifications touched on some of the most hot button subjects of our day. Apparently, it was ordered that employees remove information about contraceptive medicine from a section on patents and replace it with a patent for the bump stock, a controversial device that allows semi-automatic weapons to fire at higher rates of speed that was employed in the 2017 mass pew-pew in Vegas that unalived 58 people. I'm changing the word in there to try and split around the stuff. They have also cut, apparently, Dorothea Lange's photographs of Japanese Americans in World War II internment camps for being, quote, too negative and controversial. A Biden appointee, Shogun was confirmed by the US Senate in a 52-45 vote in 2023, but only after contentious hearings. Republican Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri argued that social media posts by Shogun criticizing Trump and Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz, as well as an article she penned, Anti-Intellectualism and the Modern Presidency, a Republican Populism, put her impartiality in question. She studied at Boston College and then Yale, worked as legislative assistant in the Senate, and then assistant and deputy director at the Congressional Research Service. She then oversaw services at the Library of Congress. The archives came into historical spotlight in 2022 when classified and top secret documents turned up among boxes that staffers removed from former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. this is not good, as I'm sure you are all aware. It's bad times. It's bad times. And it would be easy to go after her. However, I was very aware that during and towards the end of the 14 years of conservative, I use the term governance in the loosest possible fashion, there were various heads of DCMS, the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, it changed names, I believe, at certain points, who actively threatened the budgets of various state-funded museums and institutions. And state-funded museums and institutions include the British Museum, the Natural History Museum, the V&A, the Science Museum, etc., etc. And if those buildings, if those sites are funded by the state, if it is authoritarian, can tell you what history can be presented. It is one of the risks. Having freely accessible institutions that the public can use to bolster their understanding and their learning is one of the great things that a government can do for its people. But we need to make sure that we create an airlock between that government and the curatorship of those museums. Funding, yes. Oversight, no. No. What's concerning is that this news piece is fairly old. This we'll keep our eyes on this, and we'll see if you anything that you think needs the warning flagged about it. Let me know, and I will, of course, run out the flagpole. This perhaps should have gone into ding-dongs. It hasn't. We have got ding-dongs. Let's go. So, 2 have been arrested in Egypt after attempting to steal hundreds of ancient artifacts from the bottom of the sea. In some ways, if they've got them up from the bottom of the sea, and now we've got them, they've probably done people a bit of a favour. But 2 men have been arrested for attempting to steal these artifacts from the bottom of the sea. They took the artifacts near the port city of Alexandria. They were confronted by authorities. The men said they planned to traffic the items. They obtained the antiquities by diving to the bottom of the sea. We are talking about 448 objects taken by the men, including 305 coins, 53 statues, 41 axes, 14 bronze cups, 12 spears, 3 statue heads, and a partridge in a pear tree. That last one wasn't on the list. I added it myself. The items date back to Greek and Roman antiquity. So this is from between 500 BCE and 400 CE. Photographs released by the Egyptian Interior Ministry show these items after they were seized. They do look incredible. They have been turned turquoise by the patina, presumably from being under the sea for so long. You've got some statues depicting ancient soldiers in uniform. Others appear to be people draped in fabric. The coins are intricately carved with depictions of animals like lions, elephants, turtles, dolphins, and scorpions. Oh my! 2 coins do appear to show the immortal winged horse Pegasus from Greek mythology. Yeah, Brian, they were almost certainly looking to sell it under the table, secret style. However, thank you for being so inept that you got caught, but not so inept that you didn't bring up the fines. Thank you for being a good diver, but a bad fence. Thousands of solid artifacts have turned up in an Athens basement. I mean, can you imagine that? Like, let's just think, open the attic. Oh, priceless painting. Open the basement. Oh, look at all the Athenian finds. So we have got 9 months ago, Greek authorities checked out the basement of an Athens building long occupied by an upper echelon dealer of rarities such as jewellery, watches, and works of art. They found 102 stolen artifacts, 36 post Byzantine, I can never pronounce the word, I think both work, but religious objects, and 3,247 coins, some ancient, some modern. So it was a weird piggy bank. The find originated in February, shortly after the eviction of the tenants that had been there for some 80 years. This is a property managed by the National Gallery, but clearly not very well managed because they weren't checking the blimmin' basement. The space had housed this dealer for all this time. When the landlords were at work cleaning out the space, they stumbled upon a disguised trapdoor. Ooh, disguised trapdoor. Leading down into a previously unknown basement. I'm sorry, what? You're the landlords? Okay, carrying on. They found a sprawling cache of valuables in a state of disarray. They then quickly called the Ministries of Culture. I'm sure they did. I would have been pooping my pants. So they turned up. The Directorate of the Documentation and Protection of Cultural Goods and Numismatic Coins Museum of Athens responded to the call and conducted an autopsy on site. I mean, okay, chill out. They determined that 102 ancient artifacts, which include a range of vessels such as calixes to lakythos, as well as figurines, all date between the geometric period and the Hellenistic period. The post-Byzantine religious pieces, meanwhile, feature icons, silver inlays, and a hierarchical staff. The expansive, wide-reaching coin cache also apparently holds medals, seal stones, and weights. Many of them were found wrapped in a newspaper dating back to the 1940s, which is when the old tenants signed their lease. The Country Ministry of Culture, Lena Mendoni, points out, quote, in addition to the repatriation of cultural goods illegally exported from our country, a result of our systematic cooperation with the cultural institutions and entities abroad, or voluntary traditions by cultural organisations or individuals from abroad, there are also cases of illegal activity of acquiring goods within us. So this discovery and the examination has led to these items being transported to the Efferat of Antiquities of the city of Athens. A team of prosecutorial authorities and a scientific committee overseen by Greece's Central Archaeological Council have done preliminary restorations and further examinations of goods. The monetary value of this total trove at the moment of publishing this remains unannounced, probably because it is a fortune. Jessie, I'm not going down to a dark basement by myself in a house I didn't build. LOL. I will carpet that S over and pretend it isn't there. I mean, that's how a hellmouth opens, because somebody carpeted over it. Haven't you seen Buffy? Is the middle one... What was that? Is the middle one a lamp? The middle one is an ancient Cotylis. I don't know what that is, though. It's spelled Kotylis. So I don't believe that's a lamp. It's like but it's a two-handled vessel. It looks to be quite large, actually. If anybody can figure out what a Kotylis actually was, it looks like a big, like, bowl. Yeah, yes. It looks like to me it looks like a big bowl with handles. I mean, it could be. I don't know how you'd use that as a lamp. Next up, we are moving on to our last section, which is events and exhibitions. So let's hop in. This is for the summer of 2025. Julesy, apparently it's a drinking vessel. So maybe it's not as big as I thought it was. Maybe it's just close up. That's very Father-tended me. Close up, far away, close up, far away. So what we have here is the full date of this has not been Yeah, it did look. The handle did look like it was hidden. I don't know the full dates of it, except for summer 2025. There haven't been many pictures released. This is one of the only ones. But this is as part of the 450th anniversary of Elizabeth I's 19-day visit to Kenilworth Castle, broadly seen as being a time when Robert Dudley, who has Kenilworth, is really laying it on thick with the kind of love in for Elizabeth and the wooing of Elizabeth. And broadly speaking, it's as apparently there's discussions that it might be looking at why Robert failed to woo Elizabeth, why Elizabeth never married, why she never married Robert. The work of the British artist Lindsay Mendick, is going to be part of a temporary installation. It's going to re-examine the events of 1575 from the perspective of a female gaze. I think that sounds really interesting, and I think her work looks really interesting. So when we get some more images, dates about that, I will, of course, share it. Next up, we have got, that's Warwickshire. Next up, this is online. So they have fully digitized the Book of Kells. This is an illuminated manuscript containing the Gospels. And as you can see, it's an incredibly high resolution. You can zoom in, you can go page by page. You can check out the whole thing for free, open access. It's incredible. Check it out. And if you find any more, I'm going to do another video on free open access resources. So I'm compiling together. I've got a whole bunch of suggestions after my last one. So I'm going to be doing that maybe next week. So if you have any more open access resources that I didn't put in the last one that you think people should know about, speak now or forever hold your peace. I mean, I say that. I might, if more people give me ideas, I might do a third one. So we will see. Talking about avoiding marriage, Nicole, I think Liz looked at the fate of other married women around and thought, not I. I think she'd seen some fairly terrible examples of marriage. Julesy, I think she'd also seen some fairly terrifying examples of childbirth. I would have danced my way out of that. We talked about this earlier in the video. Here we go. Cairo, Egypt. The Gem, the Grand Egyptian Museum. It's open. You can see. Click to book. Main galleries. Click to book. Children's Museum. Winter break at Gem. Book now. It's open. It's open. Apparently, the complex is open daily from 8:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. The galleries are open daily from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And the last ticket can be purchased at 4 p.m. It's open. It's open. The website for you to book tickets is also there in the description box. What I couldn't find, I couldn't find any information about accessibility. So if you have better luck than me, I hope so. The same with that Kenilworth project, because they haven't listed where it's going to be in Kenilworth. So they presumably haven't put the Kenilworth information up. Kiwi Green, if you send open access stuff to my email, that is readingthepast@gmail.com. That would be super helpful. Thank you very much. Stuart asked about the Book of Kells. Haven't they done this for Lindisfarne Gospels yet? That is an excellent question. That's an excellent question. Because I don't know if the full thing has been digitized, and if it has, I'm not sure if it's open access. Let me check on that. If it is, I'll include it in the open access resources. Last but by no means least, we have this exhibition that I have heard nothing but good things about. It is going to be open for a little bit longer. It's open till the 2nd of March 2025. This exhibition, Medieval Women in Their Own Words, brilliant. From what I've heard, I'm going to try my best to go and check it out. This is at the British Library in London, so tickets are available. They have online videos. They have also got a whole host of events that are still ongoing. So check out the website, because some of the events might be online, some of the events might be in person. So see if there's things you want to take part in. I've heard some incredible stuff about this exhibition. Jessie, the Voynich is fully digitized because I've looked through it online. But now you're making me wonder if it's fully digitized and open access or not. But I've definitely looked through, I've definitely flicked through the pages in a digital context. It's available, but I don't know if it's open access or not. Miriam's not sure if Lindisfarne is fully digitized. That's what I'm thinking. I know there are some things that are really high res digitizations, but I don't know if all of them are. Yes. Jamie, I don't know if you were in the chat for this bit. Leondra, we need those festive t-shirts. What Leondra's talking about is I mentioned the festive perineum. So make a note, James, make a note. Festive perineum t-shirts. Well, 2.5 hours. So much for I'm going to not waffle. Here we are. Plus ça change, eh? This has been... I cannot believe it's been so long. It feels like I never stopped doing these. I've really missed doing them. I hope we can get back to the sort of more regular bi-monthly news videos. Child dependent, because I do have small humans. And thank you all so much. Currently in the 126 of you that are here, thank you ever so much for spending this time with me. Thank you also if you are watching on the playback as well. I've had such a lovely time chatting with you. And please make sure you please subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon. And then if you hit all, it should notify you when I've next uploaded and when I'm next going live. On the off chance it doesn't, if you go over to my website, which is www.katrinamarchant.com, and you pop your email address in the contact page box for email addresses, that will add you to the mailing list. And I do send out links for the Friday video, the short that I put out of the Friday video, and also when I'm doing a live, I put that link in there. So hopefully we can root past the YouTube occasionally not doing what it's supposed to do. Bone Mama, thank you ever so much for the super chat. That's really, really kind of you really generous of you. Thank you so much for sending that. PistolAnnie, the picture is sent by the lovely Steve, and that is Tewkesbury Abbey. That's what we've got. So some of you it's the 31st December, some of you it's still the 30th. I wish, whatever time of the year it is in this festive perineum, I hope that you are going to have a lovely new year, however you may be celebrating or not. Regardless, I hope you have a very, very good start to 2025 and a happy new year throughout. I look forward to speaking to you all in the new year, in the Friday videos, and also now in the History News Lives that are back, and hopefully back with a vengeance. I want you to take care of yourselves, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. I am going to head off now. Thank you ever so much. See you later. Bye-bye.